Okay, so I've got my cabbage right here. And what we're going to do is you always want to check your cabbage and make sure that it doesn't have dirt or blemish. Always wash your cabbage. What I usually do is I just peel off the outer layers and I will give it a good rub. You can use this. This is a little bit, the outer leaves are a little bit tougher, so I usually discard those. I'm going to be right of the frame for a second. I'm just giving my cabbage a little rub. And for some reason, I don't know, this is a very, very small head of cabbage. That's why I'm doing 2 heads of cabbage. And that looks pretty good. I'm just going to rinse this one off. Okay. And what you're going to do is you're just going to cut your cabbage in half. And you will notice on a cabbage that there is a big core. You want to get rid of that. So I'm going to show you what I do is on each side. You want to kind of be careful when you do this because the core of the cabbage is incredibly tough and you just do not want that. And you can just pull it out. It should pull out in one lump. Discard that. You don't want that. You can save the core if you're making a cabbage soup. I find that it has no taste value for soup, so I just discard it. There are other cabbages you can buy that have much better thing. And you're going to do this for the cabbage that you're making. Now, do I always use 2 heads of cabbage? If that's the question you're thinking of, the answer is no. It depends on what size my supermarket carries. If they have a very nice large head of cabbage, I'll only buy 1. If I add red cabbage to this, I will buy 1 green and 1 red cabbage. If you're a much, much larger family or you're feeding a lot of people, getting a couple of heads of cabbage is very good. This recipe will freeze very well, and it's very easy to freeze. And this pairs very well with any type of pork. Like I said, we're focusing on a pork loin roast. This goes very well with roast duckling. And I will be doing a video on roast duckling, not in the near distant future, but probably down the road. Okay, and that's the last of the course. So I've got my cabbage over here. I'm going to move you guys for 1 second so I can throw my cabbage leaves out. You can always, the outer leaves, you can always save these and steam if you like cabbage rolls. This is what you're going to use for the cabbage rolls. And eventually I will do a video on cabbage rolls, but we're focusing on sweet sour cabbage today. So now we need to shred the cabbage. You can do this one or two of 2 ways, and I'm going to kind of put you guys down. Actually, I'm going to stop. My husband's going to let the dogs out. I'll be right back. Okay, we are back. I have all of our cabbage ready to shred. And like I said, you can do this 2 ways. You can do it by hand. If you do it by hand, make sure you shred it fine. If you have a little bit thicker of a piece, that's okay, but make sure you chop it. And I'll show you the first thing. I'm going to be using the KitchenAid food processor. Doing it in the food processor is a lot easier to do versus doing it by hand, and you get more uniformed pieces. Now, I have noticed the shredder version of my KitchenAid is not as good as the chopped, and I'm going to kind of show you what I mean. And it is going to get loud for a second, so bear with me while I do this. What you want your cabbage to look like is like that. So almost as if you are going to make like a coleslaw consistency is how you want your cabbage to be shredded. Now I find this so much faster doing it in the food processor versus by hand, and I may not film all of this because it will get quite loud. You also are going to have to cut your, can you get rid of that for me? You're going to have to cut your cabbage to fit your food processor. So we're just going to, and I always when I use my food processor, I always do it on the low setting. You don't need to really do it on a high setting. And my food processor is the 13 cup. If you have a smaller cup, chances are you might have to dump this before because you don't want it to all stack up and then clog. And I still have a lot of room. At this point, go ahead and turn your stove on. And since I'm here, and maybe you don't have a food processor to do this, I'm going to move my food processor over. Hopefully get you guys more into the shot. I'm going to show you doing this by hand. What shredding the cabbage by hand is like. And virtually, you want to do it, if you're going to do your cabbage by hand, you want it to look like this. You don't want small pieces of cabbage. Although if you get like a long one like this, you can easily cut it in half. Because your cabbage will disintegrate if you do that. And I'm just going to kind of show you. Bless you, dear. And again, if you have longer pieces like this, just go ahead and cut those in half. And make sure when you have pieces like this that you separate them. You might have to cut, like this one has a little core, and hopefully you guys will see the little round area. That's part of the core. Discard that because that's going to be a really tough piece of cabbage. So I'm going to stop the video. I'm going to do this one last head of cabbage in my food processor.